The reason is very simple, that if BRICS was allowed to mature to the extent that they had developed strong secretariats, enlarged the new development bank into a functioning lending institution, if first they were able to settle most of their trade and investment out using the dollar, which is on the way of them so doing, and then in a few years' time to form their own BRICS currency, then that would leave America as another failed empire. So a primary objective of Washington, whoever is in the White House, that BRICS fails. What does this mean? First of all, BRICS are not going to disappear tomorrow.
Russia, a key BRICS member, is driving de-dollarization by promoting local currency trade among developing nations. Led by President Vladimir Putin, this initiative aims to strengthen emerging economies and reduce reliance on the US dollar. If successful, it could challenge the US-led global financial order, diminishing the dollar's dominance as the world's reserve currency. SimonHunt, CEO of SimonHunt Strategic Services, underscores the existential threat of BRICS ambitions. The bloc's plans to bypass the dollar, expand the new development bank, and potentially introduce a unified currency could erode the dollar's influence, leaving the U.S. as a diminished power in global finance. Adding to the tension, President-elect Donald Trump has threatened BRICS nations with steep tariffs, up to 100% on goods entering the U.S., if they continue to pursue de-dollarization. Even before Trump officially assumes office, this rhetoric signals the likelihood of a trade war during his tenure. Ironically, U.S. sanctions and threats have been a key driver of the de-dollarization agenda. Developing nations, weary of over-reliance on the dollar and the risk of sanctions, increasingly gravitate towards BRICS to safeguard their economies. Trump's hardline stance may accelerate this shift as nations seek to shield themselves from economic coercion. Despite Washington's efforts to undermine BRICS, the bloc is unlikely to dissipate. On the contrary, its resolve to establish an alternative financial system is expected to strengthen. Hunt warns that the escalating rivalry between BRICS and the U.S. could lead to outright conflict, with neither side willing to back down. If Trump's administration doubles down on tariffs and economic threats, BRICS nations are likely to fast-track their de-dollarization initiatives. This would deepen global divisions, creating a bifurcated economic landscape where the U.S.-led order faces growing resistance from emerging economies. The stakes are high as the world watches a potential realignment of global financial power. Make sure to tune in for our expert analysis. Don't miss out on future content. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay in the loop.
Then on the other side, you've got Iran and China. Russia and China. China has huge investments in Iran and a 25-year development treaty. China gets a lot of its oil from Iran. Russia is about to sign a very large and complex treaty with Iran, which includes defense. Both countries see Iran as pivotal in developing the BRICS, not just the BRICS organization, but the whole of the transport north-south links and east-west. So Iran is very pivotal to BRICS. Now, one of Trump's objectives is to break up BRICS. And he will probably, in his negotiations with Russia, will say something like, and I'm guessing, we give you Ukraine. We promise that Ukraine will never join NATO. But in return, you've got to break away your alliance with China. So he goes to China. Again, I'm guessing. And he says, you break away from Russia. And if you invade Taiwan, we won't stop you or try to. He has already, or it's not he, Washington has already has had some success in weakening Brazil's resolve with BRICS. The big ministries in Brazil are anti-BRICS. So that's put the President Lula on a weak footing. Moreover, so some suggest all Washington has to do is to make a telephone call and Lula is back in jail. So Washington has already started to break the BRICS organization up. And the reason is very simple, that if BRICS was allowed to mature to the extent that they had developed strong secretariats, enlarged the new development bank into a functioning lending institution, and if first they were able to settle most of their trade and investment without using the dollar, which is on the way of them so doing, and then in a few years' time to form their own BRICS currency, then that would leave America as another failed empire. So a primary objective of Washington, whoever is in the White House, is to see that BRICS fails. What does this mean? First of all, BRICS are not going to disappear tomorrow. So eventually, what it will mean is you've got two strong antagonists.
According to SimonHunt, by 2027 and 2028, inflationary pressures could push U.S. CPI to 13% or higher, with global inflation potentially exceeding 15%. This scenario could drive U.S. 10-year Treasury yields above 10%, jeopardizing the stability of a heavily leveraged debt system and triggering rolling recessions or even a depression. The Federal Reserve faces a delicate challenge in 2025, ensuring price pressures ease to achieve a soft landing. However, forecasts suggest that inflation risks could intensify, driven by economic policies under President-elect Donald Trump. Elevated tariffs, robust economic growth, and persistent inflation may create a scenario with no landing, where inflation remains stubbornly high and interest rates stay elevated. The Federal Reserve has sought to control inflation for the past 2 years, without tipping the economy into recession. While the central bank has not yet achieved its 2% annual inflation target, it has successfully contained unemployment, allowing economic growth to continue through 2024. Optimists believe 2025 could finally deliver a soft landing, though the path is fraught with risks. Let's get back to the interview.
There's probably going to be a deliberate policy by the Trump government to take a lot of the fat out of the economy in order to have a sounder base from which they can grow the economy and grow prosperity. For instance, Elon Musk on the 29th of October said, "We have to reduce spending to live within our means, and that necessarily involves some temporary hardship, but will ensure long-term prosperity." So we've got to have a solid base before we can produce the better things for everybody. So on our cycle work, we will see a weak global economy in the first 6 to 9 months of next year, by when the fiscal and monetary stimuli, which Trump and others will introduce, will start a 2-year boom in equities, in business activity, and in commodity markets. But the problem is that it will be accompanied by rising inflation. And what we see as we go through 2027 and into 2028, we will see a repeat of the inflation process that we experienced in the late 1970s and early 1980s. And what does that imply? If US CPI is around 13% and global inflation around 15%, what are long-term bonds going to yield? US 10-year treasuries will be yielding over 10%. What is that going to do to a highly leveraged debt system. It's going to be the end of this particular cycle, and we go into rolling recessions or even depression. So how does the frictions or the wars being seen in Europe and the Middle East, how do they fit into the scenario? It's very possible that the Trump administration, who don't want wars, will do what they can to prevent the wars from escalating.
The ongoing shifts in global financial systems and escalating inflationary pressures highlight the precarious balance between economic growth and stability. As emerging economies work to reduce their dependence on the dollar, and the U.S. navigates the challenges of rising debt and persistent inflation, the financial landscape is becoming increasingly polarized. These developments underline the need for careful strategy and adaptability as nations and investors face a future marked by uncertainty and potential realignments of power. How do you foresee these global financial trends impacting investment strategies and economic policies in the coming years? Share your perspective in the comments section. If the video resonates with you, join our community by subscribing to our channel and enabling notifications with the bell icon. Thank you for being a part of our community.